I'm in this Oval Office.
Super hyphy. Sorry, I always forget to warn my guests how weird the intros are going to be. Sinjun, it's been forever. Not forever, actually, but a while. Last time I saw you, I feel like was at the Avalon in Santa Monica or Hollywood or something like that, long ago. And maybe be interesting to introduce, though, a bit about your life and background, and particularly also your connection to spirituality through your grandfather. But go ahead.
Yes, man. It's been quite some times, a couple years, a couple lifetimes. Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, man, I'm glad to have you.
Enjoyed the epic intro. I've always had a special place in my heart for metal music, man. I'm an artist. My name is Sinjun, and grew up in the Midwest. Got a midlife crisis around 20 years old and made my way out to Los Angeles, where we met. And my mediums for art have included everything from fashion, paintings to memes. So that's, basically whatever I can get my hands on as a creator. I've been in the crypto space the last few years and enjoyed that. And definitely have always had a spiritual influence through my work, which I don't really know the roots of that spiritual influence. Could be from my very religious upbringing as a fundamentalist Christian. I always say we were like half Amish growing up. But maybe from my grandfather was a big influence on me in my later teens. He was a minister at this great place, Unity Church, and had a big influence on me. So that's kind of a little bit about my background and what I'm doing.
When you say you were half Amish, like what is that? Was that kind of visualize that for us? Describe that a bit, and then also a little bit about your grandfather after.
Yeah, that's a phrase I use. I think it captures my experience as very strict, I'd say like fundamentalist Christian background, but living in Pennsylvania. We also had neighbors who were Amish and were friends with, and the women in my family wore bonnets, head coverings.
Wow, so you were literally near Amish people and Amish culture.
Yeah. I've ridden in a buggy before, which, by the way, they do have radios in those things.
Really?
Yeah. There's something about, from what I remember, there's something about it not being exposed wires.
Are you kidding me? This is the coolest idea ever. What? You can have So like, basically I can imagine an Amish hipster who's really like into analog synths, Sorry.
Yeah, it's probably out there.
What? Oh, that's amazing. But is that kind of like Mennonite, or is that different? Sorry to...
Yeah, I think Mennonite actually can drive cars. They can have technology. There's something about all the colors have to be black or white with Mennonite. Like they'll just drive black cars. So I don't know if they're related to like, the Men in Black or something, but yeah, they're similar in their philosophies.
You can have a bass woofer, you can have big tweets, but your car has to be black and horsepower. Yeah. All right. That's pretty sweet though. Okay. So that's interesting. I don't think a lot of people understand what it's like to be Amish, let alone Amish adjacent. And so that must have a huge upbringing shift in your life. But you say you weren't Amish in the sense that your grandfather, who is this guy, Reverend John B Webster, which, by the way, this blew me away because I met you and then I saw this video and I think you shared it or something. And I was like, wait, what? So that's incredible. But who is John B Webster, to you?
First and foremost, he is my grandfather. He was also the spiritual leader for Unity Church in Dallas, Texas for probably about 30 years. And he had a big influence on the church there, being a kind of like a core of the community. He served as a leader, minister, and that might be the website. Unity Church is, I would almost call them like a non-denominational church. They teach a lot of the teachings of Jesus from the New Testament. It's very much based around the Gnostic teachings of Jesus, the all-encompassing love of that, what people say is his original message, which is like, hey, you know what, let's just love people. And, you know, even if it's someone who is an outcast or whatever, like, let's do our best to love everybody. And we also have the power of God within us to heal, to manifest, to create. So on the YouTube, there's actually, I inherited some cassette tapes of my grandfather's, and I took the audio, I converted them to digital format, cleaned up the audio, and put them up on YouTube.
Man, it sounds great, by the way. Like, considering that came from a tape, you did a really good job. You know.
Thanks. I had some of my music production background was helpful there, and like getting it's a lot of the noise. There was some of those tapes were like 20 something years old. So
I'll put the links in the description, because I really love this kind of stuff, and these are some of the best conversation, and it's just from a bygone time of preparing for the apocalypse, in a sense, and behave. I mean, it sounds kind of, I make it sound a little Catholic. It wasn't that, you know, scary sounding, but it's more like, yeah, like, get up and do stuff now, love your neighbor now, kind of a thing. And like, this one was how to solve human problems now. And I thought that it's pretty fascinating stuff to sort of not just ask for forgiveness so you can be immortal, but like conquer your lifetime, conquer and ascend through your lifetime now. I think that's really an important set of lessons that he offered.
Oh yeah, and I think they're very timely. It's like he was talking about some of these things decades ago, but it's just more timely than ever. And I think it's a piece of our lost history. You know, like there was this man Jesus, and what did he teach? Like what was he actually saying? And I think out of all the different theories and explanations and paths of Christianity and Jesus, the part that my grandpa teaches, it resonates the most with me, is like, this is probably what he was like. This is the most likely nugget of his teachings. So yeah, I hope that's helpful for people. I hope it's inspirational, and certainly has been for me.
But yeah, so you're on a bigger wave in a lot of ways, and we'll get into that in a second. I wanted to pull up a recent news thing that happened that was kind of, to me, interesting. This came up last week, and the APEC conference, they've got this logo, and if you start to notice, the logo has a very specific shape that so many people will have their own connotations about, right? This is, for most people, a swastika, right? Would you agree? Does that kind of look like a swastika to you?
Yeah, definitely.
Right. And it's at the APEC summit, and so you've got Klaus Schwab, who is German, incidentally. I think he's Swiss, but it's not necessarily the point here. I mean, this is in Thailand, but we're talking about the World Summit, and I was thinking about this because you've got all these other symbols. You've got Indians here too, right? So you got the Jainist Hindus, India. They have their symbol. Let me see if I go to Wikipedia. Well, it just it's right there. So I was wondering, do you have any thoughts? Like, do you have any thoughts on the swastika? And like, what do you know about the swastika?
Yeah, I actually saw this come across my feed last week, and looked into it. It's interesting that this conference was based in Thailand, and it's particularly about a lot of Asian countries. And for billions of people who are not in the West, over in Asia, the swastika represents goodness and blessings. And it's seen throughout the culture in many, many, many different places. A lot of Buddhist places, but just used as a design element.
I love this. I have this sticker that has every single, not every single, but a lot of cultures, including the Vietnamese, the Hebrews. I think, is Thailand on here? I think Thailand will be on here. I know Israel is, so there's just, everybody's got a swastika. I mean, Spain's Basques and everything.
Yeah, it's literally in virtually most every human culture and place across time, across the globe.
Yeah, and so maybe this might be a point to bring up spiritual punks. I don't know if you feel like it.
Yeah, so Spiritual Punks is an art project that I was doing at the time that I met you, actually. And Spiritual Punks were people who kind of like they stood up for love and truth in a way that was like very punk. Like to me, that's the punk idea, is like you're going to stand up for your own truth, your own expression, even when it goes against the grain. And people like Jesus were like that, Buddha, anyone who kind of like bucks against the trends, the mainstream trends of the time in a way of true truth and true love.
I have so many of your shirts from that era. I'm trying to find the Mother Teresa one is so good. Mother Teresa is a spiritual punk. Gandhi is a spiritual punk. I can't find any examples online now, but
yeah, I had done a series of memes with this. I built out an Instagram, and I used it as a place to explore the swastika in a spiritual context. I got inspired a lot by this for the Canadian artist Man Woman. I saw a picture of him like standing next to my friend who's an artist at this gallery, and he's like covered in these swastika tattoos, and
but like a hippie,
yeah. But at first I'm like, who is this guy? Like, what's he?
Yeah, what's it mean, right?
And he was a very important artist in the last century who took upon this mission to reclaim the swastika so people would see it with love. And, he had a series of dreams about this. I do believe he had these kind of like samadhi experiences just based on his personal journals. It's like he would talk about painting for 18 hours at a time without even getting up, and just being completely immersed in this light. And then if you read other descriptions from monks, it's very similar. And he didn't really know what it is or what happened or how that occurred. Who knows, like maybe some future science will tell us that this is something in the brain, maybe a DMT release or something. But anyways, he actually influenced me a lot, and he's a very important artist. I urge people to look into his work, and I always try to give him credit for being a important inspirational piece for me on this.
I mean, it's an interesting idea because, like you said, it's very punk. It's very abrasive to the pushing of the herd in a direction. It's saying, no, I'm not going to react to that. I'm going to make my own choice. I'm going to look at the history of the symbol. And it's such an important thing because it's a symbol that's being held hostage literally by hate, and a symbol that comes from not just, from so many things, but love is, of course, the fundamental. The swastika comes from love. It represents love and tolerance of all people, but also abundance, right? The sunlight, it's the sun symbol, luck and charm. It's so weird that the peace symbol be the symbol of death. How did we get here? What's going on?
It is ironic that if you could pick one symbol to represent hate, you couldn't pick one that's more opposite of that. Really, I mean, and if you look at the first image you showed with all the different countries and faiths and places that have the swastika, every single one of them, the swastika represents something good. And most of the time, the swastika represents ultimate blessing, ultimate goodness. Like if you could encapsulate like a representation of the ultimate blessing and goodness, you use the swastika. A lot of times that's why the swastika is on the Buddha's chest. It's a representation of the mark of a being who has accomplished great enlightenment, great wisdom, and compassion. That's the swastika. The swastika is a mark of that. So it actually experienced a very like a cultural renaissance. It was very trendy, you could say, in the late 1800s. Heinrich Schliemann discovered swastikas on all these Greek artifacts at the ancient site of Troy. Before he discovered Troy, this is this ancient Greek mythical city, and he actually discovered this city. And wouldn't you know, this swastika was marked on thousands of artifacts, Greek artifacts and pottery and spindle whorls. And
interestingly enough, because you point this out, the logo, people always say, oh, well, you know, it's backwards. It's like if you wear it on the left ear, your earring makes you gay, and the right. No, it's like this swastika is one direction for the Greeks. It's another direction for the Jews. It's another direction for the Africans. Some of them are at an angle. I mean, it seems like it's not just that you can make it evil backwards either. That doesn't even make sense. It's not. It's just it's a propeller. I don't know what you want.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I find fascinating about this symbol is the context is so important, and the nuance of that is very important. And it's one of the reasons it's a good exercise for us to, at this time in culture and place where what are facts and what's true and what's not, we can use this as an exercise to exercise our ability to discern. And with the swastika, you're absolutely right about that, because it's kind of like the yin yang, where the left facing is female and the right facing is male. It's active. The left facing swastika just female or inward turning, more peaceful. The right turning is active, more masculine. That's it. That's the direction. So that's the difference. And and actually, even there are the Nazi swastika version is right turning. It's masculine. He specifically wanted it to be active like that, powerful. And if you look on most times, the representation of the swastika on the Buddha's chest is left facing, to represent like an inward turning, more calmness, peaceful. Yeah.
Interesting. So it's pretty obvious that whoever built this, you know, imagine you're some kid and you build a little diorama 1,000 years ago with a swastika, and you bring it outside and the wind spins it, and you're like, oh yeah. And then all of a sudden you've got the Dutch windmills, you got the turbines, you got so many systems. This thing is so useful. It's not just that it's kind of neat looking. I mean, you could look at the nano turbine swastika. Oh, there's another word. Gamadian. Sorry. This is the word when I was in school, because I did engineering. This is the word they use to describe Gamadian nano. See, look, starting to come up there. Boom. They don't want to call it a swastika. You know. So, but what they'll do is they'll build the symbol in engineering for photonic turbines. This is not a UFO. This is a nano-sized light mill drive. Let's see if I can get a picture there. This is probably under 1,000 angstroms. So this is maybe like a 1 micron. This is, you know, atoms in size. And of course, with light hitting it, it spins. So you can use these for all sorts of energy, you know, nanoscopic turbines, right? Which can produce small amounts of voltage, right? Because they can just gather ambient field energy. And I remember this paper came out just about a month before we met. And then I saw you with the shirt and I was like, dude, this is the only way, like, because they're literally not allowed to use the name of the item in the scientific paper.
Wow.
What are we going to do? Right.
So do they, in the paper, do they call it Gamadian? Is that what
they call it? They call it the Gamadian. Yeah.
That's fascinating. I haven't looked into this.
Yeah, that's the way they get away.
And it's interesting. I believe it was the Greeks or the Romans called it the Gamadian as well, because it's 4 gammas, right?
Right, and technically it actually makes a lot of sense, because it's not just I mean, the Gamadian has to do with light itself. If you're gonna make a photon turbine, you know, gamma, you know, but also the idea of God, right? So it's like the God, the light God wheel. You can think of Heliorchus. I can't ever spell this. Heliorchus. I don't know. Heliorchus. One of these will work. How about this? City of On, ancient city of On. There we go. The city of On, which was Heliopolis. That's what you could call it, Heliopolis, but orchestrated by Helia. This city covered in Gamadians, of course. I don't know if I can find any just off the top, but it's the thing where it's a symbol everywhere. And like you said at the beginning of the 20th century, at the end of the 19th century, I mean, it's like Coca-Cola swastika, right? I mean, it is what it is.
It really became swept the world. You could say it was like a hearkening back to ancient times, and also Native Americans all over America have used that, and Canada were using the symbol. So it was almost like a nature reference, just a universal symbol of good luck, and it was really just everywhere in the late 1800s. And I think this was one of the reasons that Hitler did choose to use it, was because he saw, hey, everyone's attracted to this. It's literally everywhere. If I take over the world with this symbol, well, I'm already there. Like, everyone already likes this and they already resonate with this. So that might be one of the reasons that he chose it.
Yeah. So do you think that, I mean, so it's clearly a very powerful symbol, though, because it's universal. It's like the dragon. It's in everything. And it's so important that they can't even really get rid of it, that they have to keep using it for technology. So what do you think's going to happen? I mean, do you think it's kind of like, I always think of things like hemp that are so valuable to civilization that they've kept from us. What do you think's going on? Like, because keeping something from people, it can be so, there are consequences.
Yeah, I've thought about this. Like, is there a conscious effort to hide something? Why is it not talked about more? And I think the simplest explanation is, well, it's inconvenient. I think for many people, it's even saying the word swastika for a lot of people physically hurts in a way. There's like an internal tightening, like it even just that word. And over the years, I remember too, when first getting into this artwork and just like verbalizing that word, it has so much weight to it. And I think for someone who's like, maybe if you're a teacher or something, you're like, I would rather not even have to like talk about this. And I think a lot of that is happening, or maybe even the paper, like they don't want to spend time kind of explaining all of it. I think a lot of that is happening.
Noah Levine?
Yeah, I've seen him before.
He does a lot of Dharma punk stuff, and he's focused a lot on Buddhism, and it's interesting because the swastika is, of course, such an important and magical symbol, and so he uses it a lot to try to like help people that have been through prison systems or been drug addicts and everything figure out the actual value of the symbol, because they've been obsessed with it for the wrong reasons sometimes. And then he can get that, well, if you really like the symbol, find out what it's really about, and that tends to help a lot of people. But I also worry that people who aren't in, this is why the symbol is so associated with Brahmins and priests, is that you have to be a spiritual punk. You have to be a healthy person in order to advocate for the symbol, because you carry the weight of your own dharma on the symbol. And that is maybe part of the reason why, I mean, it's now associated. What's the problem with the symbol? It's associated with humans who made horrible choices now, right? As opposed to the gods who created the universe, which is what it was for originally.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And that's a great way to inspire people to learn and educate themselves and kind of like get in touch with reclaiming that for themselves. It's definitely there's an ancient, powerful attraction to it. And I think it might be even in our bones, in our DNA. It's one of these very basic shapes, and it definitely has a draw, and maybe there's something sacred to that. And that it's not because it's something evil. There's probably something very, very ancient in us that's just attracted to these very simple symbology, simple shapes. And yeah, what about that is sacred? What is there's a lot for discussion here. It's not just very black and white as a lot of things are painted in.
Well, and so that brings me back to the Bilderbergarians in the World Economic Forum and APEC, and but they're patently associated. I'm sorry to say it. I'm just pointing it out with evil. Yet at the same time, they're trying to do their best to help the world a lot of the time. I mean, this is a lot of people that are around the world. They're spiritual, and if you think about it, in Thailand, in India, people that are trying to get out of the Pepsi control, and there's a lot of effort being made to try to produce a new world that is ordered. It's not always that they're trying to produce an evil world. There are people that are trying to save the world from Monsanto at the same time. And so I wonder a lot when I see Klaus Schwab associating with this symbol. Is he going to champion the original Vedic intention and try to free the world? I mean, or is he what's he doing with the symbol? I mean, he's bringing it back. Is he going to betray us? Or is this a good thing? Is this now the mainstream going to let go and accept into their consciousness things for their own values? What's going to happen?
Yeah, there's big questions, man. Oh man, I don't actually. I don't know a lot about this Klaus guy. I've seen him more. What's his deal?
Let me give you my favorite Klaus Schwab quote.
Okay.
Klaus Schwab quote. It says, "We will buy. You will own nothing and be happy." Where's that?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I know that one.
Yeah.
Is that okay? I remember in
everything he says is pretty hardcore. I mean,
so do you know the origin of that quote though? This is from a video made in the late or a few years ago, and it was from this woman who she said that was part of her article. She was working, I think, for the World Economic Forum or something. But the intentions of that, there's something very actually beautiful about that phrase. And it's of course it's seen in a totalitarian lens. I think it's just terrifying. But the original intention of it, and maybe there's some interplay there with the original intention of the swastika. So with that phrase, when we think about our consumerist culture and having to own everything, if I have a tree trimmer, right? Why does every person have to have a tree trimmer? Why can't we just have one in the neighborhood or one in our community? Why can't there just be a few hammers? So there's a movement of people who are figuring out how do we just own less stuff? Why do I need? Why does every house on the street
have a maker space? Right.
Yeah. It's rooted in that idea, and then when he says it, it's I think there is
right.
Something
exactly.
there.
I agree with that.
There is something there. It's not just an idea to throw away, but yeah, if they're the totalitarian powers accomplish that, it's probably not going to be the same thing. It's not going to be this community-based thing. So and then that gets into well, what's the story that these kind of people have about the world and how it is, and then that's all up for question. It's really existential.
Well, this is a lot of presumption on my part, and asking you to join me, but thoughts of good versus evil, or because I don't really believe that there are too many people that proactively try to be malicious and bad on purpose. I think most of the worst evil, at least let's say most of the worst evil, comes from good intentions. I mean, his idea of good intentions, right? He's thinking, it's probably that he thinks it is a good thing.
Do you know who Charles Eisenstein is?
No, let me see.
This guy, the way he thinks and he articulates this stuff, read everything this guy, he nails it. He freaking nails it. Read what he's got some incredible articles. Go, check out some of his on his blog and a couple books. he came up with this phrase like that I use a lot: the more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible.
Mm-hmm.
He talked about COVID early on in these totalitarian powers, and like not losing sight of the compassion, like not falling into like judging someone as pure evil, because then we lose our compassion, and that's what's at stake too. So we have these narratives of like, let's get the bad guys, and then we're going to have good in the world. And that's a narrative that's been running for thousands of years,
Right.
and it just continues the entire
and
story.
Every single time, let's pull up a picture of Fidel Castro. Every single time you just end up with we're going to get rid of all the people that are corrupt and dictating what we're supposed to do and controlling and redistributing our wealth, and we're going to do it ourselves. Sorry. Had to do that.
Yeah. Exactly. It's just a continuation of that. And like, then he had a recent thing I read about, just like,
He's a Substack.
Can someone be 100% pure evil? And maybe this Klaus guy is really truly acting from this story where he thinks he's helping the world, but maybe it's not. Maybe that's not like the most evolved and healthy story. Like, so then that's the thing to me. That's the thing to attack, is the story. It's not the individual, not the guy, because then you're never going to fix the problem. You're not going to get to the roots of it. So it really comes down to like the stories that we have about the world, the stories we have about science, and how we like, can we capture and measure everything and then like fix it all and keep us all safe if we just control all of it? Like that's just a story. So really it's not, to me, it's and what Charles says a lot is it's not about the individuals that are espousing this. It's more about the story itself, because that story is going to continue and the characters will change. So
that's so huge right now, because we live in a narrative-driven reality, and everyone is, it'll take 48 hours for most people to hear about something. I can hear about it right away. Let's say that someone in Japan who's prime minister gets shot. I'm going to hear about it probably within 20 minutes or 8 minutes of it happening, because I'm close enough to people, around the world to hear something like that. 48 hours later, BBC's running the narrative. 48 hours is a long time. Yeah. And by that point, people have lived their lives about other things, and they're not really interested in finding out more of the truth. And so it's easy and here's the other thing. I've noticed I don't exist nearly as much as I do on the internet, in the sense that there's more videos of me, more people are interacting with me, if you were to measure them digitally, than in real life. So in other words, I basically don't need to exist for that character to continue to exist. This is the same with truth in a narrative-driven reality. All of a sudden now, there are more people making their choices based on the narrative than are based on the truth. And so that affects us perhaps more than the truth does, at least immediately. Do you think that's true, or is that...
I mean, we're in some weeds here with this, because this is like, this is deeply philosophical area. Like what is true for us now, 100% may in 20 years, 100 years, 500 years be completely, untrue, complete dog shit.
Yeah.
But this idea of like, what is true, what is not. And I think actually it's going to land on somewhere like outside of measurable science, does it result in human flourishing? Does it result in opening hearts, compassion? It's tricky stuff.
And it's not as abstract. I mean, it's the answer is abstract, but the consequences and its implications. I mean, the swastika as an example. Here you have a piece of what could be ancient alien technology or something. It's a propeller that goes with the Ankh. You know what I mean? And it also represents love and sunlight, solar panels, and everything in between. And this symbol is something that can save lives, right? Psychologically, physically, scientifically, and it's being taken from us, right? So this is all based on this idea of narrative driven reality instead of truth. And we have to respect that. There's levels there. We're like, well, I understand, because the people have died and are hurt today because of this symbol. So we have to acknowledge that. But what do we do?
Yeah. And I think it's really about better narratives. And I think this is the realm of narrative, this human existence, this reality, this ability to have memory and tell about something that happened yesterday, or just like hold a dollar, or have, a future. It's all stories. Like, we're living in these stories. So what are true stories? What are ones that lead us to somewhere where we want to be? And because I think the narrative is this cheat code. It's this powerful tool. So how do we build that tool properly in a way that is, going to be better for everybody? And I think the swastika is a helpful exercise in this, because we get to really parse out, like, what is true, what is appropriate, what's not, what's the context. And I think for every piece of content and every narrative out there, there are these questions, like,
this is us cleaning up the narrative. That's what's going on.
Nice.
I feel like there's a level of that that's really true. I mean, it is one of the biggest tasks. You can think about it like in the 60s, people had to liberate hemp, and it took 40 years. It took a long time. But they started with other things like, let's see, the VW bug, which is, come on, decidedly a symbol of German socialism for the 40s. Probably way more than the swastika. Let's be honest. This is the symbol of Nazi Germany. But it also is the symbol for peace and hippies and prosperity and working on do-it-yourself, fixing up your own vehicle and everything else, because the hippies took the symbol, and the other thing that's interesting, I think we kind of barely brushed on this, but the Lieben rune, which the Germans tried to replace the crucifix with the Lieben rune, right? And this is the symbol for life, but it was often used for, if you flip it upside down, inversion of symbols becomes the death rune, right? The death rune. And then so you can think of the death rune as the peace symbol. So the peace symbol literally is the inversion of a, considered connected, Nazi adjacent, but a Nordic symbol that is for death. This is the death symbol, but it's been reclaimed. And I've known so many first graders to third graders that have this symbol in their Halloween costume or in their backpack or Skechers, so it's not impossible to flip a symbol here. And this is maybe not a bad thing. Who needed a death symbol? You know what I mean? I don't know if we needed it to be that way in the beginning. It had to do with inversion. So that was okay. But I do wonder more and more about fixing the swastika.
And I think there is a nuance here that's very important, because we're not talking about changing the meaning of the Hakenkreuz, which the Hakenkreuz is the Nazi symbol. It's the Nazi flag. It's the Nazi swastika.
Always acknowledge what happened. Right.
Yeah. And it's like, we don't want people to then feel that that's the good symbol that we want to put everywhere, or change the meaning of that. Because that's important to know that distinction. I mean, a left-facing swastika on the Buddha's chest it's not a Nazi symbol. It's not a Buddha Nazi. Right. Or there are variations. There's all these variations of it that are not Nazi, and it's really like, I haven't done a meme of this yet, but the concept is like, so the upside down cross, right? Mm-hmm. And the right side up cross. It's a cross. Yeah, see, know what it is. St. Peter's cross. So a lot of people in America, in the West, they can see that symbol. In most of the context, people see the upside down cross as like a satanic cross. They call it
right. And it's natural to imagine you take a symbol and you invert it. That is a normal logic, except for there's a Catholic origin comic book. There's an elf story.
So people are very easily, they know the difference between the right side up cross and the upside down cross. Now, when it comes to the swastika, there isn't the same level of knowledge. Really, it's just like, oh, even if it's left facing and it's got a different, maybe dots in the middle, there might be someone thinking it's a Nazi swastika. It's just not the case. So yeah, there's definitely that's a nuance as well. And then yeah, like what constitutes like a hateful one, what doesn't. These are all. Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with. There's more cases of this happening, but there was a kid, a university, I think last year, George Washington University, who he brought home a swastika from India, and he was expelled like immediately. And they put out a press release saying, we will not tolerate anything hateful here or whatever. But they didn't, if you go into the details of it, like he had posted, hey, I got this swastika, I found this in India. And like, because they really didn't say what it was and the nuance of that. So it's like, is that happening? Are people just like, they're not aware? Or maybe I think more like probably the university didn't want to have people misunderstand it or think that they tolerate it because they have this agenda to keep up or they have their jobs to keep. There isn't any discussion about it. There isn't any nuance allowed. It's just like, oh, swastika, that's bad. And that's really very black and white.
Yeah, it seems, I mean, that is very scary. And that's very fascistic very didactic, autodidactic to say we're not allowed to have any symbols. And again, this is an example of one that's a peace symbol, and it's very clearly has nothing to do with. I mean, this has clearly nothing to do with the Germans, and so that they're. I mean, it's an interesting thing that they keep pushing this idea of obsession with Nazi Germany, right? For a symbol that's got so many thousands of years of culture behind it. I mean.
Yeah, and I think there is like a reason for that. I don't think that maybe some have agenda, maybe don't. I don't know because I'm not in the heads of people who are making these decisions. But I think there is a reason. I mean, this was used broadly by the Nazis, by Hitler and he just blasted it everywhere, had it on everything. And, even in school, we learn about the Nazi swastika on the flag, and that's it. Like
and here we are with our pentagrams all over our flags, and it's like, okay.
And that's another one, yeah. Then that gets into the pentagram as well, and these things do hold power. It's important to know the distinctions and
not to negatively charge a symbol, right?
Yeah, like we are affected by these symbols, and maybe we don't have to let it have as much power over us as a hateful thing. Maybe we can maybe even take away power from people who use it for hate. Maybe there's that's a possibility.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So that's one of the things I was really most excited about when I first met you and you were working on Spiritual Punks. I know it's like a nearly impossible feat because you have to A, be the most awesome person you can be, B, often probably defend yourself because people are so suffering from post-traumatic stress from the reality that they live in. And so, I mean, I just wonder how did this go when you started doing the Spiritual Punks movement, and what's been your experience with trying to positively charge a symbol with love?
Yeah, it's definitely been a learning experience. Been a lot of learning a lot about like my own expectations. How do I think people will receive this? And really,
God, you make just the coolest shirts, though. This is the coolest shirts. Come on, guys. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, I was on a big food kind of thing for a while. So,
dude, the donut, I gave my brother the donut one. He's got it still in his workshop on the. It's really been like an exercise in empathy, like really getting in someone else's
head and thinking, how will they receive this? What are the words that we can use with this symbol to where it's understood as something good? And that's very challenging. You had the one pulled up earlier, "You are beautiful," which was really the first, I would say, the first real swastika design I've done. And I took me a few months of really like sitting with that and like, what are the words that would actually fit with this, where you would know immediately this isn't a hateful thing. And there was a series of artworks I did with that inquiry, and yeah, the "You are beautiful" is one. And even if you change one of the words a tiny bit, "we are beautiful," well, it could mean we and not you. So and that's a beautiful wish that there, I believe, can't be inverted to anything hateful. So yeah,
right. And it works. I feel like people, and so the reason it's like when someone walks by this person and sees this happy-go-lucky, positive person telling them that they're beautiful and they have the swastika on, I mean, 9 times out of 10, at least, probably more, people seem to be shocked, and then they're okay with it. They're like, "Oh, you're a nice lady." Okay.
Yeah, I've definitely, I've experienced everything from curiosity to just disgust, or like
Right.
not. I maybe people's brains scramble a little bit. Just can't. It just doesn't fit into any.
It was
into
really
any
hard.
box.
The last few years have been the hardest, right? Like, so since 2016, 2017, after 2017, everything got a lot harder to share. People were so divisive. Ideas.
Yeah. And we met maybe a decade ago, and around that time, I kind of like I worked on a story album and wrote a story about radical creativity, but without using any swastikas. But the swastika stayed very alive, and it's been a consistent muse in my life, and I think it will be continued to be so. It's definitely a life form and energy that I feel is like one of those archetypal things that's beyond my human self, human life. I think the result of eons of time of people energizing this symbol with goodness is gonna continue, and probably hundreds of years. Who knows how long it takes to return the symbol back to all the cultures and truly reclaim it. Maybe that's centuries, maybe it's 50 years. I don't know, but I think in the long span of time, that good meaning will be what remains.
This is my favorite shirt. That if this offends you, you need a history lesson, and it's got the donut with a number of swastikas from every culture, including the Hebrew culture and African culture and Hopi culture. It's just such a great shirt. And it was just, during the 2017s, people were so much more looking for a fight. I think that the problem was that it was, if this offends you, you need a history lesson. People were like, well, I don't got to do nothing and everything like that. So the "You are beautiful" thing, that works really well all the time, because it's just like, oh, well, then if I want to know, I'll ask you more, Even though this is still my freaking favorite shirt.
Thank you.
I wore this into a Starbucks one time, and someone was like, "Are you serious? Are you kidding me?" I'm like, "Nope. Yeah, I'm serious."
Wow.
Today.
I'm curious what what the other stories are. I've sent them all over the world. Now I will say with the designs I would do now would be a little different, just because the culture shifted a little bit. I haven't worn this shirt in a long time. I think it'd be very hard to now. And
dang it, Kanye, why'd you have to? No, I'm just kidding. But yeah.
And also my design has changed over the years. But I had we had a lot of stickers of those that went out everywhere, and I think there's a conversation there around like, well, what is appropriate, what is not. Does me as like a white man in the West have anything to do with what's appropriate with it? Like, can I use a donut? That might be more offensive than someone like a Hindu kid in India who's deciding to make a pastry shaped swastika.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, so the thing is, it's interesting. Like that shirt, it is it's confrontational, but coming from love, and so it is. It's like I'm not going to move if you start running at me. I'm going to continue to stand here, and I'm going to continue to point out that this symbol has love connotations. I mean, from every culture, that this is a universal symbol. It doesn't matter where I'm from. We're all from a place where this symbol is a human symbol, an earth symbol, a natural symbol. And all, it is interesting also, where was the looking at this doesn't matter where you are, by the way, because if you go below the equator, most of the astronomy changes, your constellations. I was so annoyed when I got to Peru and I couldn't remember my Boy Scout constellations because I remembered them, but they don't work. The other side of the world, you don't see them, right? But you do see the Giant Dipper. So everybody sees the Big Dipper Gamadian Swazi that represents the seasons, represents our lives. I mean, it's something that's so inextricably linked with the human condition. It's not, it's not one of those things they can say, oh, well, you're a white boy, so you can't, or you're a black girl, so you can't. It's everybody,
Yeah. And what in that reply that doesn't allow for it, what is that? Like, where does it stop? Where does it end? If you could, you can tie it back to most cultures, like how far back are you allowed to go? Allowed. But yeah, like it has this archetypal cosmic resonance with the Big Dipper. It's a spiral. It's from what I have gathered, it's the simplest form of a spiral that you can do with, like, if you have like 8 sticks, you can make a swastika. It's going to it takes more sticks to make a curved one. So it's the simplest form of a spiral. You can just mark it right there. And the spiral is representative of everything in nature. Everything spins, all the planets spin, the atoms spin, the galaxies spin. This spinning motion represents life, just being alive. And what a greater gift and blessing than being alive, than life itself,
I wish I could find the U.S. House of Representatives seats because they're covered in swastikas as well. It's a symbol that's in our modern government. I'll see it.
You could probably put fabric, maybe like seats.
Yeah.
It might be a Sayagata pattern. And Sayagata is the most popular swastika pattern you're going to find. You could probably go to most grocery stores and then find a swastika patterned
something like that
product.
But yeah, I don't know exactly what it is. But the thing is, it is everywhere, and you'll look and you'll see again. If you're not the one to reclaim the symbol, then Klaus Schwab and others will be. Maybe they'll do it right. Maybe they won't. People have done it wrong before. I know you have done it right so far. And I think that that's an important thing. I think it's important to champion the symbol from a righteous place. And because otherwise it could be used for evil. It's been done before. So it seems like it's more pressing than ever to try to fix, a bad situation.
Yeah. And I think that, if we could reclaim something like this, if we could view this with positivity, what else can we? What else is worth reclaiming and restoring and energizing with positivity? I think one of the questions I had about this very first, when I made that first rainbow swastika design, was like, is there somewhere that love doesn't belong? So, and the well, I would think no. My grandpa's teachings about Jesus was very much about unconditional love, and the swastika seems like the last place that you could put love. Like love is great. Put love everywhere, but just not here. And when I ran that equation in my head, I was like, yeah, but it would go there then. Like it would go there. So maybe, personally for me, and maybe it's also like just an exercise in love. What happens if I put love here? If we put more love here, maybe there's healing that can happen. Maybe it'd be good.
So what are some other things you're working on now, since you've been, you said you're working on blessing everyone. Is that right?
There's
Blessings every day.
Yeah, the swastika has been a consistent muse in my life, and I've been also working in the crypto space the last few years with NFTs and DAOs, and I've created this project called Blessings Everday, and Blessings Everday is it's 12 moons, one NFT swastika every day for 12 moons. And it started on the full moon this last full moon at the beginning of the month here, and it goes until November 20, end of October of 2023 next year. And yeah, I'll send you you can see all the artwork on blessingseveryday.art, and there's a link there to the OpenSea.
There we go.
If you click on the art feed, you can see the recent NFTs, and these are also artworks that are from myself and other artists. So the goal is to create a community of creators from all over the world who want to create healing artwork with the swastika, one swastika artwork every day for 12 moons. And the intention is to bring healing and blessings to all.
That's adorable. I need that shirt. That's cute.
Yeah, this was actually done on Man Woman Day, on Man Woman Memorial Day. That artist, Man Woman, has every November 13th, people give away free swastika tattoos in remembrance of his work with the swastika. And he has a famous design called Smiley Swastika. And this was like my take on that. So I'm into dancing, so I did a dancing swastika. And it was really tricky to like get the legs right on that. Yeah, there's Smiley Swastika.
I was thinking recently, like, so after I met you, the Bank of America symbol changed to this thing, and I was always like, oh, that is so clever, because it's so close. It's just almost there. It's not quite, but this bend here kind of gives it, you know, and then up here. And it's interesting because if you know the history of Bank of America, when it used to be the Bank of Italy, and then they were aligned with, in World War II, the Germans, and so they changed their name to the Bank of America and their symbol. But this is the way you'll almost always see it. It's almost always a white stencil. So it's the white American flag of surrender in the shape. Yeah.
Yeah, when you see there's a common bricklaying pattern that's on sidewalks everywhere. It's like you can see the ones on the left there look like 4 bricks. And that one's, I always see that one and notice the swastikas in that. That would that be?
Absolutely. There was another, let me go back a page here. Oh yeah, the Ganesh is really good too. There was another set of symbols I saw that you were doing though just a second ago. I saw the where was that? Designs by Sinjun on Coraflot. So this is interesting because, or where was it? I just saw this, the 666 and the pentagram, you know, so trying to fix those symbols as well, maybe. Or what do you think about, I mean, yeah, I guess 2012 is actually pretty funny too. It's like, hey, happy 2012.
Yeah, like I think that's part of my work. Part of my work has been revealing the light in something that's traditionally dark. Pentagram is another example. Pentagram's a symbol of the 5 elements. It's a sacred nature symbol, and it's not something, for me, it's not something evil. Same with 666. That could be it's a lucky number in Asia. And I think there's always an ability to shift our perspective, like question our beliefs. And the intention with a lot of my artwork is doing that, creating a perspective shift or revealing light. And yeah, even something like 666, like why buy into the idea that it's evil? Is it, you know, like, is that a narrative that I want to energize and buy into just because everyone else buys into that?
Right. I remember specifically, isn't it that the wise know the number or something like that? The wise know the number of the beast.
Hmm.
I forget the 666 revelation. Let's read that real quick. Beast wise know the number here. I don't know. I thought it was that only the wise would know the number of the beast or something like that. I don't think it's I mean, it is the number of the beast, and it's the number used to buy or sell anything. But
Oh, interesting. My grandpa on his YouTube, there's a talk about the end of days and Armageddon and like a Gnostic interpretation of what that is. It's really interesting when looking at it through like a symbolic lens. And yeah, and it representing a shift in consciousness, really. And yeah, why is it's really an interesting. You could put maybe Armageddon or I think it's one of the later ones.
I spell that right? Armageddon. Yeah, okay. And I don't think that didn't show up. But the Miracle of Your Mind, 6 of
Yeah,
9.
it's definitely in there. Revelations, that's it. That's what he called it. Yeah, Revelations. It's a really interesting take on what it is.
So what are you saying? So like the world we're preparing for the end of days and choice making, or
yeah, like and the chaos that comes from entering a new state of consciousness and letting go of the old, and there's a lot of symbology in that. It's obviously his teaching is it's not to be taken absolutely literally. It's not like there's some something coming in the actual sky. It's like a state of mind, a state of consciousness. Yeah.
nice. Well, I know we're past an hour. I don't know how you feel. Are you down to go for longer, or is an hour good for you? How we can go another hour if you want. It's up to you.
I'm having fun. Yeah, let's go.
Okay, cool. So have you heard of Everday?
No, I have not.
So there's this religion called the Church of Subgenius. Have you heard of that?
No.
So the Church of Subgenius is kind of like Discordia, as in chaos instead of order. And you've got Discordia when Lee Harvey Oswald talked about Eris, the goddess of chaos, and Discordia for 19 minutes during the court trials and his relationship to Discordia and Carrie Thornley, who is associated with Discordia. So there's a huge thing here with this whole side religion here. And what they created, there's Satanism, there's Scientology, there's all these different things. But Discordia believes in Bob Dobbs. Bob Dobbs is the greatest salesman that ever lived in America. And, he could sell snow to an Eskimo and get an Eskimo to lease snow. And one time he's in an elevator, and whenever he has the magical power of being able to get the better deal of anybody just by shaking their hand. So he shook the hand of L. Ron Hubbard. And this is all like a mythical backstory. And it's all related to Bob Dobbs is really Robert Anton Wilson, who was the editor for Playboy and wrote the conspiracy theory sections of Playboy and wrote the Illuminatus trilogy. And so they kind of created a religion around this kind of guy. Very interesting character. But they talked a lot about Everday, and they said, okay, so there's Jehovah 1. I forget the name of the bad guys, but there's radio stations that are broadcasting from Dyson spheres in space, and we're getting the radio stations. And there's a good and an evil one, and we're headed towards Armageddon. In 1998 was going to be the beginning of Armageddon. 2012 was going to be kind of the end of it, but it was going to be the best thing ever because it was going to lead to the end of history and the beginning of Slack, which would be automation and free energy and everything in between. And so this is one of those groups that tried to, you think of like Whip It. Devo, I think. Devo. Right? Devo band. Is that right? Am I saying this right? Yeah. These guys were Subgenius. There's a number of these kinds of bands in the mid 80s that were Subgenius and that were hyper obsessed with free energy. And so you talked earlier about unity, right? So Unity Church. Over Unity, have you heard of this? Like free energy, they refer to having more over Unity. That's what it's called when you have created an engine that is able to produce more energy than it's stored. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm just thinking about these thoughts in terms of how these words relate spirituality to energy. And it seems like they're all connected, that the idea of these symbols are going to not just unlock our personal freedom and mental health, but also our ability to not be stuck on a battery, on a power system.
Yeah, that's great. And I like, sometimes I like, there's an exercise Richard Feynman talked about. He was this physicist in the 1900s, talked about, just think about it like a Martian. Like, how would a Martian think about it? And a lot of times that's a great way to like zoom out of like our own ways of thinking. And like, yeah, how would a Martian think about this? And like, what level are we at of energy capturing on this planet? I mean, it's probably a very basic level. Like we probably understand, 1% of how to actually capture and use energy that's possible out of there, out of the universe.
Yeah, the
And,
idea that there's just potential energy everywhere. I mean, that we're able to the idea of field energy is interesting. That there's just ambient energy everywhere, and it's not so much like, if people talk about alchemy, like you can produce more energy than there is maybe against the rules, but there's just so much energy.
yeah, there's a guy, Nassim Harameem, and he talks about how much energy is in a single like atom. How many atom bombs of power, whatever. Just think of the atom bomb. You split that thing, and like how much energy that unleashes. So what's that about? And we're made of this. We've got electricity running through us, and Tesla also hit on this a lot. And then going back to the swastika, it represents that energy movement. I've had experiences where I noticed there's like a field, like a rotating swastika from my solar plexus. And Man Woman, the Canadian artist, he also said that too. He said that everyone has a swastika inside of them, and it can rotate either way. And found in my experience that to be true.
So what about the connection to the black sun, right? So there's this idea of, the internal sun that's in your soul, and it's often kind of symbolized looking like a Greco-Gamadian swastika almost. Do you think that there's some? Do you have any thoughts on that? Kind of
Yeah,
sounds like that.
yeah, it looks very similar. It's this archetypal spiral energy movement. It's active. There's energy moving. It's a wheel. It's a propeller. The Native Americans called it the whirling log.
Whirling log. Interesting. Yeah, it has just such a circuitry motif to it. Like, it definitely feels mechanical. Like it's more ancient than we are, for sure. We just noticed it.
There's a group of people, the Raelians. Raelianism, it's like a UFO religion or cult. Some people say it's more like a cult. That's a swastika interlaced with a Star of David, two hexagons or two triangles. And this guy, he saw a UFO in the 1970s, and they had that symbol was marked on the UFO. So it was a symbol of this like very high technology, higher love, higher consciousness from another planet. That particular pendant that he's wearing right there is, I think they kind of changed it to be a little less provocative, to kind of like not scare people away so much, but they've since gone back to the original one, because that's the spiral inside of the Star of David. But he's an interesting character. He's also I believe he was like a race car driver, like Indy Formula One race car driver in the 1970s, and then he ended up starting this whole religion cult, whatever.
It's a pretty interesting group. I remember the Tom Green interview and also Martin Sargent on Unscrewed, and I've seen him talk a few times. And his association with science is also fascinating. So the amount of Raelians, I mean, they're French, a lot of them, but there's also French Islanders and what's that island? Doesn't matter. Just a bunch of really important places around the world with telescopes. And Clonade is we talked about this on the show before. Clonade is an American-based human cloning organization founded in the Bahamas. It has a philosophical ties with the UFO religion Raelianism. So many of the members involved in human cloning and the funding that was involved, not to say that this is necessarily, but Epstein did get involved. He put his hands in everything, trying to get money involved in cloning. So I don't want to use that as a reason to say Clonade is necessarily, or that the Raelians are associated with him. I'm just saying that he did try.
That's interesting.
That to me, what I'm trying to say is that he saw them as the most legitimate human cloning opportunity, right? And so that means that they really were the furthest along in doing that. And so they've talked about, if you type in Clonade Eve, you go to 1997 Fox News article about, and which is still up, obviously, because it's true, is that it's not an April 1st post. The first clone baby from Raelians in Clonade, created in Bahamas and then raised in Israel. And so this is supposed to be 1997, one of the first. You've got a clone that's been in vitro fertilized and raised gestated in a human. Just as normal in vitro fertilization works. So it is interesting because a big thing about the Raelians is like saying, hey, we're connected to space and that there are light beings, same as Everday, same as the Unarius cult or religion, Unarius religion, I should say. Very interesting group. Reagan was a member, sort of. His wife was, at least. And, this California cult, I believe, was also 1998 was going to be the beginning of this time. Jehovah's Witness had a thing about 1998 for a while. The Watchtower Society at the end of 97. The next phase would begin and end in 2012. So, I mean, it seems like so many of these groups do focus on that time. And it was interesting when you brought up Feynman, because talking about Martians, the idea of the holographic universe, right? So this has been coming up recently, the idea that every planet you're seeing, Mars and everything, how the idea that stars are super distant, so you're really just seeing time travel. You're seeing light traveling from, they're already dead, that idea. So in other words, those stars could just be here at a different time. Space-time is this relative concept. So you could be standing on Mars in another timeline, in Jupiter. No, it's a different space-time frequency, perhaps.
Yeah, that's mind-blowing. There's just so much there. Like what, and I mean, even like my hands are existing in a different time. The reality of my hands are
right.
It's further back in time than when the light reaches my eye. We're in this weird in-between time between stories. We've came from this ancient pagan view of the world before civilization, where we had this intimate relationship with nature, and now we've had this flourishing of science, and we're able to like break everything apart objectively into all these little component pieces. And then, we really have lost our story of the world, our story of reality, and like what is going to end up. My question I ask myself a lot is like, where is it leading? Like, where is that world story of truth that we can root in? And like this holographic idea, maybe, part of that, like integrating what we've learned with science and also our non-measurable parts, our souls, our hearts, and, having it be all one story that's rooted in this cosmic truth that is beyond something we can measure.
What do you think about transhumanism? And do you think that, are we supposed to ascend naturally through spirit only, or does technology play? Is it, it seems like a super fast, useful thing. Is it a dangerous genie with the the gauntlets?
Man, that is it's a great question. I'm definitely influenced by Kevin Kelly. Kevin Kelly's the creator of Wired magazine. He's a really interesting guy. He has a really unique take on technology for a guy who started Wired magazine. This is like, technology magazine. He also has a great reverence and respect for the Amish. The Amish actually, a lot of people think of them as these Luddites who don't embrace technology. They're behind, but they're actually probably about 50 years behind our modern technology. They have a relationship with it where they don't just buy into it right away. Any new technology that comes up, as far as I understand this, they will allow the person in the community to use the cell phone, to use the radio, whatever it is, and then they all watch to see how it affects them. And then they make a decision based on that. And he talks about technology in this way. If you look at technology and how it's evolved, how inventions happen, how things get created, it's very similar to life forms existing on the planet. If you look at how life evolved on the planet, from mutations and ideas coming in, and just mutations of species, technology has followed a very similar path. And so it's got me thinking, is technology just as much of a life form as my biological life? Possibly. I think if that's true, then it has a role in the universe that I believe is benevolent, is good. Maybe we're experiencing an excess of this technology in a way that's not, again, we're probably in some weird in-between phase where technology has not, it's this infant idea still. It started when we picked up a rock, and it's this fractal that's expanding, and transhumanism is part of that. And I think, this isn't a question that I can decide for, no one can decide for humanity. I think in 100 years, our great grandkids are going to be exploring this very intimately. And I think it's going to expose a lot of the questions and things that we think are important today. They're not really going to be racism. When you have transhumanism start to begin, hey man, humans
Droids outside, right? Yeah, exactly.
But it's when you think of what a computer or a guitar unleashes creatively for us, it's unbelievable. And I think that
you have Windows machines that are racist against Linux. Yeah, I can see it. No.
and also hey man, I want to wear fucking wings and have green striped skin today. That's the way I want to express myself. And I will put technology in my body to be able to have a tail, because that would be fucking dope.
Right. Do you ever Christopher Walken say what he wanted as a magical superpower? A tail. Christopher Walken wanted a tail.
Oh, really?
He's like, if I had a tail, people they'd be like, oh, do you see Chris today? Don't go messing with Chris. Look, you see his tail? It's up wagging. He's upset. I don't know, of all things to want, but that's fair. That's fair. I thought the wings were good, but wings and a tail.
I think there's a lot of fearful ideas floating around about transhumanism, and they're well founded, because what if it becomes this? Yeah, there's probably going to be expressions of that are very toxic and not based in path that we want.
Less self-expression. I think people are so used to buying into something because corporations say, we'll make you more yourself with this blue or red jacket, and it's you were only half yourself. Now you can really stand out because you have a red jacket. And I think people buy into that. So I think transhumanism, more chance to express myself. But then, and I'm pretty for that. But the other side of it is, usually Apple locks down their devices. So if we become one of their devices, that is human centipede,
Yeah, I think they're, I could see the Nike freckle, you've got the Nike freckle, man, right here. But there's also I think the thing that gets lost in that is there is probably, if technology is part of this natural part of the universe, like there's probably a piece of that that's really cool that we actually do want, that would be helpful. And like, I don't
Right.
know, like it seems
The
like
Amish
that
way,
would be the
wait
case.
50 years and then jump in. Yeah, exactly. Once you figure it out.
Watch everybody else, like, and then you're like, okay, all right, maybe I'll
But
do.
they have some things, right? Like, so music. How do you feel about music? Aren't Amish not allowed to like music or something?
Yeah, no, I think they have, they definitely sing hymns when they go to church. And um,
See
uh,
what the rules are. Amish enjoy music. Okay, so they're just it has to be about God, maybe, or
and probably
something.
not amplified. It's not amplified music.
Hmm. Oh, but they have a harmonica. Okay, you know what? Everything I knew about the Amish is a lie. They sound great. An Amish kid gave me a ball once. I have a wicker ball made by an Amish kid. It's the greatest thing ever. I think Amish are,
Nice.
yeah.
I hear that they can build a house in like 4 days.
Oh
And
yeah, I mean, well, they put it up in a day. They built. It takes a couple days to put the walls together, but then they just, yeah. I had some family in Indiana and Illinois that lived near Amish, and dang impressive. That is for sure. But also, yeah, it seemed like I saw some documentaries on people that left the Amish community, and they felt like it was really hard to be part of the community. And if you weren't like, I mean, then you just aren't anymore. Then you're off the grid, basically. And that's got to be pretty rough. And I've met so many kids, probably like a dozen kids that were Rumspringa. And yeah, kids that were Amish that start trying things for the first time in LA or Santa Cruz is dangerous. Those kids don't know. They're like, oh yeah, okay, I'll try a beer. Oh yeah, I'll try methamphetamine. You're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Oh God. Just like go to the
wow.
beach, Yeah, I don't know.
That's true. Yeah. And yeah, do they have something in there that's like that we could all learn from, and then not like that's a question. I know for me, being close to that kind of like philosophical upbringing can be very suffocating and very like it's very rigid. It's like this is the exact way, and if you do not follow this, then no, like you're not even you. We will not even you're not even able to live here.
Vapor
And
Sharia, yeah. I mean, so okay, but in terms of like, so I was thinking of the radio reality in the holographic universe and the Veda. So in the Veda, you got this kind of idea of a multiverse, and I like it. I like the idea that we're connected to. And you're talking about your hand at different times. I like to think about if there's dark matter, then my mass is being affected by a bunch of problems. If this is just one tiny fraction of a percent, then it's likely it's not just one other chunk. It's probably that there are a lot of other radio stations as well that we're all maybe affecting different multiverse strings of each other. Do you think that there's something like that? I mean, we're already affecting our own reality a lot.
oh, definitely, yeah. Maybe it's like some like a bell. You look at the like a singing bowl and a bell, and then also there's a higher question there of like what things do I want to put in my belief box that are going to help me just navigate reality better, be a better human. Um, there's an interesting book called "What If Everything We Think About the Future Is Wrong," and there's some interesting thought experiments in there about like some of these huge, big scientific things that could determine how reality is. Like they're probably not going to change what you have for breakfast tomorrow. Yeah, if they find out that reality is a simulation and prove it, well, like you're probably still going to like pancakes, and how much time do we invest in trying to figure that out? And like, it's a good question. And some things like I think it's interesting. I studied Kabbalah when I was younger, of Hermetic mysticism, and I remember there was this warning that that they give to the young. I think in the Jewish tradition, the Hermetic Kabbalah in Kabbalah, they will say you can't study this until you're 40 years old. I believe was the rule. And I was like, yeah, I got it, man. But it does things to the mind. It's very powerful
Right.
stuff. And like, if you're not ready for those conceptual philosophical ideas, like they can kind of take over.
you study Kundalini and Kabbalah at a young enough age, you become a weirdo like us. I don't know, man. I had a friend when I started doing Kundalini yoga, like as a teenager. He's like, if you start doing that, you're not welcome back in my house. And I was just like, what? There are some people that are, they're very afraid of Gnosticism, of Hermeticism, of Kabbalah. It was interesting to me, your grandfather's interest in Gnosticism, because that for a long time was considered heretical by the Catholic Church. There was a second crusade over this idea, but without Gnosticism as an opportunity for people to pursue their spiritual capacity as individuals, Gnosticism kind of ended up in the OTO and then Aleister Crowley, and so you have only Satanism that is like, okay, well, if Christianity won't deal with it, then we'll deal with it. So that's another thought I wonder about. What do you think about these alternative, Christianity did become very controlled, right? I mean, maybe it's different for you because you had such a rad grandfather that was trying to reclaim Christianity. I was raised more Catholic, so I think we have a different perspective. Maybe I think American Protestants have. I'd like to believe they're thinking they can redeem Christianity. Is that true? Where are we at with that and Satanism in America and secularism and all these things?
Yeah, there's a sense that just because what's working now doesn't work, let's go back to the past. And I don't think that's
Alexander Dugan. Sorry, yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
There's something.
I mean, you actually were around Amish, so but
yeah, let's just. It seems like slow down a little bit. There's an interesting thing about Christianity actually changing over time. If you're a modern Christian,
really,
you might
I have to interrupt you. I'm sorry. Simon Clara says, do you think it's possible to repackage meditation in a way that's palatable to Christians? Yes, the Ignatian method exists. Start doing your rosary. Okay, I'm done. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a good question. I have had experiences with people who think that anything, even yoga or just anything that has any kind of flavor to it of New Age, anything is Satan. So it's like, well, getting over that. But then there's these variations of Christians that don't have that view, and right. Christianity has morphed and changed so much. So modern Christianity would not even be recognizable to someone in the Crusades. They're so different.
Absolutely.
And so then, 500 years in the future, what is that version of Christianity? Are they sitting around doing yoga and meditation? And that's.
I hope so.
They seem to be, these very, yoga meditations is very, very helpful practices for our health, mental health, and why not integrate that into Christianity? Yeah, these meta narratives. I don't know. I wonder how they are on other planets. How does this thought of this is that a common thing? Is there a common thing for this kind of very religious narratives to exist? The memes.
Well, it seems like religion I always thought of as reconnection, reconnection, realignment, whereas yoga is union. So it seems like if you're in yoga, you don't need to get back to religion is to get you back to yoga. It should be. And then when you're in yoga, I mean, it's kind of like going to Bible camp. I don't know how else to describe it, because you're spending all day worshiping. If you do yoga all the time, you're thinking about God and reality and nature and your body in ways. And I think it's really important. I've seen so many atheists because they were so upset at their parents, so therefore they were so upset at God. And that's a whole other problem with the personification, anthropomorphism of God. But then afterwards, they're thinking, okay, well then I hate my parents. God doesn't exist. But they get into yoga. And all of a sudden they're like, okay, well, but this exists. What is this? This is something, right? And that's a useful thing. People to get connected to beyond their empirical, rigid minds.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely had those experiences growing up as well of Bible camp and that my grandpa came in a little bit later in my life as the influence for hey, here's another way to look at it. And yeah, I think it's tragic how we can get so divided over that and lose The original idea of these things is that they're an exploration. They're an individual exploration into existence and consciousness. Yoga obviously opens up the door for you to make that explorations. That's one of the beautiful things I've found about Buddhism, is that it's a personal inquiry. It's not like there's these hard and fast rules. You have to follow this exactly. It is that you discover for yourself, like, does taking excess alcohol inhibit you or help you? Like, you decide. There's not a rule like you can't drink alcohol, but there is a rule that you don't engage in things that intoxicate your mind.
Yeah, don't get drunk. The drunk is different than the drinking, right? Don't get belligerent to the point that you're out of control of yourself, right?
Yeah.
Man. In terms of the reality that we're sharing, though, with Martians that believe in the same spiritual center, what do you think that objective spirit is? Is there something that's transcending all realities that's true and objective?
Man, I'll get back to you in 30 years on that. I feel like I've had enough experience as a human to answer that for sure, but it does seem like polarity is in this reality. So that seems like a universal truth and change.
Do you think polarity? Do you think polarity is something they're trying to like subdue? I felt like with so many things where sexual polarity is being subdued, cultural caste levels of culture. It just seems like the idea of polarity, of dynamic, even the idea that the poles are switching, genders being switched, everything. There's just so many things that the polarity is alternating current. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, that's an interesting. Maybe it's like a meta meme that's happening all at the same time across all these levels, and inviting us to inquire, like, what is worth changing here, what is worth not. And I think it's all up for debate, and yeah, we live in these really wild times. So I think on all sides, like, there is a reason for the push here, the push there, and like I think with going back to the swastika and the work with that, it's like, why does someone have this view? Why do we believe this a certain way? Why does this represent a certain way? And like, how do we come to believe things are true even? Yeah.
I feel like there's a steel man instead of a straw man approach. We have, instead of breaking down the weak, because it's so obvious the weakest arguments with something, what's going on is we're not hearing out, like, people that are so hurt, they're not feeling heard. So if we're able to be clear in our full understanding of all the suffering and pain, if we can help process all of that abstract, compressed, concentrated suffering and trauma, if we can help process that collectively, then it will be processed. It'll be out of the system. It'll be out of the effigy. It'll be out of the emblem itself. But I don't know how we're supposed to go about that every day. So yes, did you see Kanye West on Tim Pool?
I saw some clips.
Yeah, right. So here's what's funny to me. I mean, as a guy who used to work there, like, I think it was like 94 times as many people watching saw it. Like, oh, I don't even watch. I like Kanye. They go in and they watch him run off the set. But it was interesting because he brought up some things and then he was kind of shut down. And so he's like, if I can't talk about this, then what's the point? He was talking about his doctor who's trying to keep his family from him and everything else. And he's talking also about the idea of like the status quo controlling the world, and the way that the reason it was shut down is because he's referring to groups of individuals that are part of these extended collectives, right? Instead of saying, hey, this is a symbol, these are the connotations, these are the processes. I guess what I'm saying is, it seems so difficult if he can't do it, this rap star who's famous, if we can't process this and talk about things, then how are we ever going to? It just seems like everyone's like, don't bring it up. Don't talk about the subject. It's too painful. Not at the dinner table. When's the time? How do we do it?
Yeah, definitely experienced that with the swastika, and even just currently, like wanting to go have a talk about it, and like how are people are they going to judge me a certain way, or like how do I say this in the right way so people know it's not coming from a weird place or a place that I think they would. And um, yeah, how do we talk about things that are hard to talk about? And I think there's this is something um, that we're all exploring right now as culture. Like, yeah, and there is a sense that also, like, when you, even from the side who wants to censor things, like there is at core of that, it's that we all believe in this more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible. Like having that as a frame has helped me just have more patience with people who don't understand right away, who want to push back. Like our hearts agree on the same place. Like we want the future to be better for our kids. And if yeah, I just have this idea, like a lot of times, like if someone is wanting to just shut down or censor, like it comes from a place of just like wanting peace. Uh, and of course there are probably people out there who maybe it also comes from a place of just wanting to be right, wanting to get back to someone, you know. Yeah, and of course, yeah, social media is kind of highlights the worst of those examples for us. Like, yeah, like I've jumped back on there more recently, particularly with this project Blessings Everday, and um, I yeah, I also am wondering, like, what does this do for my view of other people? Is it kind of like warping my view of other people because I'm seeing like how people behave on Twitter? And yeah, these are like, how do we do public sense making? How do we sense make and make sense of the reality of things, give space to things that are kind of like explosive or divisive? And things need to be aired out more. Things need to be just sensed out and talked about in public.
So a big thing is that relies on, which 99% of the time is fair for, you being a great person, other people being good persons. You meet with them and they're like, there's an immediate confusion. Wait, are you a good person or are you bad? Oh, you're a good person? Bad. Okay, we're good. Okay, then we can talk. But without that, there's still the question of evil, right? And so what do you think about malintention or evil, or are there people like, because this is the internal question. Is it this organic chemistry of consciousness that allows for corporations to create bad things, or does evil exist? Is there evil in us and in the world? And what is evil?
Yeah, that's and is evil this good and evil? Is it it's a story of polarity? It's probably
right. Evil thinks it's more right than God, more righteous than God. Yeah.
I think there is a danger in attributing evil to a group of people or a person. And
right.
I think the frame that's probably better is like seeing if someone is evil and acting in an evil way, they're more like an unhealthy, unevolved human. Like maybe they suffered severe abuse. I mean,
right.
You could even think of someone like with the swastika, Hitler. Like we a lot of times attribute him as like the ultimate version of what evil is. Like there's nothing redeeming in him, but also like he probably suffered like extreme, like, I don't know, humiliation and mental anxiety. And like, it's just not, he was not a representation of like a healthy, balanced, mentally healthy community, whatever, individual. And so when people, I think it's easy to write people off as evil. And then you kind of like don't get to the root of the problem, which is these stories, which is just like the narratives and the memes and the meta way that we, the narrative soup that we live in. That's really where the issues are at.
It's interesting. We've known each other for about 12 years, and we've talked about swastikas and India and spirituality. This is literally the first time I think we've ever even mentioned Hitler or Germany, because it's so unrelated. It's a thing that happened, but it's not the most important thing to the swastika. But it is important when we think about this idea of good and evil. And I like what you say, because the idea that it's on us not to judge others and to call people evil. It isn't about the objectivity of evil choices. We can acknowledge evil choices, just not calling a person evil for it, probably, or a thing evil for it. I mean, things are filled with good and evil. People make good and bad choices all the time. If we can do that, maybe we can be more sympathetic and compassionate to humanity and help them through that.
Yeah, I think that's the hope. And also that I don't want to get the feeling like I'm some, giving out moral instructions to people.
No, right.
I'm
egging you on to tell people what you think. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like the more that someone does do that, the more disingenuous it is, I feel. And, holding space for like the shadows that we do have, and probably the evil that we have in us, the ability for violence, the ability for hatred, that I'm not totally free. I'm not free of that, man. I'm not. I judge things probably too quickly, and I make immediate judgments to strangers I don't know. Yeah. How do we evolve past that? Because that doesn't seem like the most evolved human experience.
There was this I forget what it was. There was this comedian, and he was talking about, he's like, he saw these two guys with a baby, and then he's like, oh, are they gay or are they child molesters? And then he's like, well, that's a horrible thought to have. What's wrong with myself? And then he's like, well, then, but they're black, so they're probably not child molesters. And he's like, well, that's even worse. Why did I make that stereotype? Where do these stereotypes come from inside of myself? And it seems like that is we're constantly making these judgment calls based on these really, really abstract memories from maybe media or something that happened when we were 15 or 12. And the only way out of it is to constantly acknowledge it. You're like, wait, shut up. Why are you why do you think for that, and whatever it is, it used to be a lot worse, obviously, for the former generations. I think we're getting better at, like, for instance, you're saying to yourself, like, why am I judging this person? I should be more open-minded. I should, take some time to evaluate. This is the kind of thing. We could easily be trapped in thinking that we are holy enough that we don't need to work on ourselves.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought experiment. And I think it like, to get to that point where we can, like, kind of work past that, we have to probably have some form of communication where we're able to just say, God, I don't know. I feel like so unexperienced in, like, my opinions in this area, but just around, like, what free speech is and being able to talk about these offensive or shadow things, like, and sense make them, like, because what you said, like, you couldn't say that on a public platform as that, like, comedian did, and in a way without being, like, judged harshly right away or something. So
right. Yeah. But he made the point of trying to, like, kind of like you said, like, I have inside of myself imperfection. And so I think this is something also we could all do, is spend more time acknowledging our own, the internet's filled with people blaming each other for their faults and saying to catch up with the times, rather than focusing on, what do I have in me still that I could work on today? And I think that would be, if everyone did that, we'd be a lot further along.
Yeah. And how do we meme that into existence? How do we kind of flip that script a little bit?
So you talk about meme a lot. I love meme. I consider myself a meme lord. In terms of spirituality, though, because this is Dawkins talked about meme, kind of a genetic term, but spiritually, what do you think about memes? What's the spiritual? It's the evangelism of meme.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, meme is just it's a symbol. It's these stories, micro stories, tools that we use to navigate reality. And they are sacred. I think like maybe memes got us into this mess. Maybe memes can help us get out of this mess.
Right. Yeah, it's the meme to be post-traumatic stress is a meme. It's a learned memetic. And so much of our prejudice is. All of it is.
Yeah, right. And so it's an objectively real thing, but it may not be the truth, right? It may be.
Yeah.
It's
We respect people's experience, but
yeah. I have a friend who's been very like wise guidance to me for a long time, and he said something early on. He was like, "Trauma is a myth." He's like, "I don't believe in trauma," and I thought that was an interesting frame because personally, I do, but I think there's also a frame for that, like maybe even questioning that, like the idea that like there's you get in some weird places, like you know. Is there a space for that suffering to exist? Is that okay? Is that how does that fit into reality?
I'm gonna look up trauma really quickly. A physical wound, a wound, hurt, a defeat. Okay, well, maybe there is something weird about using that word necessarily. When I think of trauma, I think of something like an existential experience that's too much to process. I just think of it as something that you store for later. A lot of the time, people get these traumatic memory. I mean, it's very MK Ultra, but the idea that you've got these memories you can't process until later, and you think about maps, right? And you get these soldiers with post-traumatic stress. They literally can't remember what happened in Afghanistan, and then they are on ecstasy with the doctor there to make sure that they have enough serotonin and dopamine to process the trauma, and then they'll start remembering stuff. And then the next day they'll be like, I can't believe the stuff I remember, but I'm okay because chemically I was able to go through that finally.
Yeah, I think he was speaking more to like a narrative sense, like using that as like a crutch or like an excuse, or not something more so physically in the body, but just like excessive use of that narrative, that meme.
I tend to feel like we've got, engrams, like Scientology talks about, like the idea that, each trauma or something could be a stored demon it's something that's making you make choices beyond your own choices.
Yeah, that sounds very much also like Scientology, the thetans that everyone has inside them. But there's like an archetypal truth behind that, probably, that, we're influenced by these energies that find a way into our bodies, and how do we heal that, and how do we use that in a way that actually helps us?
Well, I don't know if you can hear my dog. My dog's right here. I can hear yours, so I feel like
Yeah.
Probably we're supposed to take our dogs for walks in a minute. Do you want to tell me where this has been great, by the way? And I hope that you have time to come back soon. I want to get you on Sync Tank and talk about Kabbalah more and everything in between. Do you want to tell us where we can get some more of your stuff in the meantime? What's a good website to go to?
Thank you. I'd love to be on there. And it's been an absolute pleasure here. You can go to the website, blessingseveryday.art, learn more about this project, doing one swastika NFT artwork every day for a year and for 12 moons. Read more about the history of the swastika here. You can look at the art feed there, and that's going to show the latest artwork. Also Twitter and Instagram as well. It's all blessings every day.
Epic. Yeah, let me go to the Instagram /blessing, 2 L's, blessings every day.
It's
the wrong one?
Probably wishing you blessings. I think it is on Instagram.
Wishing you blessings. Wishing you blessings. My keyboard's messed up. There you go.
Yeah.
Newly followed. Yeah, man. I mean, so there's some really amazing artwork here, and I just love following all the stuff that you've been doing for the last decade. So I'm excited to see where this goes. And it's 365 new pieces of art for the year. I mean, that's great. That's awesome. So I hope everybody, you're going there. Make sure you're following Wishing You Blessings on Instagram, and then also go to the go back a page the blessingseveryday.art, and you can get to the NFT collection. And let's all get involved with this. I think this is the kind of thing that we really need to do. We need to work together to charge symbols with love. And some of us are stronger than others. So if you're able to charge the symbols that people have already charged with negativity, charge those symbols with positivity. See if you can do it. It's like a cool home project. See if you can make people feel love when they think about the swastika. I mean, and tolerance and universality. I mean, the connection between all peoples. I mean, see if you can really get people to associate the swastika with love of all peoples. If you can do that, I'll give you an A+. So
you win the life game. You win the creator game.
You win the game, right? Yeah. Sinjun, I love you, man. Thank you for being here. Let's do this again soon. Peace out.
Brother. Much love. Peace.
So long as I'm in this Oval Office.